Welcome back to Live With. I'm Dave Palumbo, and today's guest is a special one. He's the owner of Evogen Nutrition. He's also coached some of the top bodybuilders in the sport over the last 2 decades. It's my pleasure to have him back here today. Hany Rambod, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. I think the last time I was on your show was when we were in Dubai together.
Dubai, that's correct. You're absolutely correct. And that was a good interview. So it was a shame I had to go all the way to Dubai to interview you. But now you have your own podcast. You're an interviewer now.
Yes, absolutely. We got to get you on there one of these days.
Know.
The Truth Podcast, definitely it's been great. Phil and my friend Andy Frisella were the ones that talked me into doing it. And it's been good. It's been, in a way, therapeutic, especially with the lockdown and everything else that's going out here in California. But yeah, it's been a great change. It gives you an outlet, especially with all the issues that we're having with the lockdown.
Well, you have very strong opinions anyway, so I think it's a great idea that you started your own podcast. Do you have your own gym in your house? I meant to ask you that.
No, I don't. In California, it's literally we're in the middle, smack dab in the middle of Silicon Valley. So it's been very, very difficult. The gyms that we've been using are outdoor gyms. So we have some gyms that have outdoor areas. They went out and invested $20,000, $30,000 in these tents and whatnot. And that's been okay when the weather was, up until about a week ago, it was still in the high 60s, low 70s. Yeah. And so that was okay. Now this week, we got 2 weeks of straight rain coming. And the lows have been as down in the mid 30s, high 30s at night and in the mornings. Nobody wants to train in like 40, 45 degree weather outside.
That's not fun. That's not fun.
Yeah. So, and I see you wearing shorts and you're enjoying the Florida weather.
Yeah. But I wore shorts in New York, Hany, so that's not even a good that's not a good measure of what the weather is. But let me ask you that: I'm surprised you haven't built a gym in your facility.
It's all about real estate. That's the cost in Silicon Valley. We're a block from Netflix. We're just a couple miles up from Apple. We're a mile from eBay, and Facebook is right up the road. So you have all of these tech giants that are where I originally grew up, and everybody asks me why am I here? It's because I grew up here. But when you're in Florida, or if you're in Texas, or if you're in Arizona or Nevada, it's much, much less expensive to be able to build your own facility. So it's been definitely difficult. I think we're the only supplement company. Evogen's the only supplement company in the whole Bay Area. The last holdout was Cytosport in the East Bay, and Pepsi bought them, and they moved them to Chicago because they said it was too expensive here.
Wow. Well, Balco, is Balco still around? Does he still have his company, Victor Conte?
Who's that? Yes, Balco has a small office up in the Redwood City area. So but it's a smaller office, but obviously they're not anywhere the size of Cytosport or some of the other ones. But I think he's still around. And then, but Champion had split off, and now Champion is I think has a small office in South Florida.
I'm surprised that Jay and hasn't talked you into moving out to Vegas. I figured he would have said, Hany, what are you doing? Move your stuff out to Vegas. That would have been a good, not too far for you, but yet still reasonable. You can get good real estate there. I'm surprised you haven't done that move.
Honestly, it's all been two things. Number one, I went to school in UC Santa Barbara, so it was beautiful on the beach, just about a 4-hour drive south of us and about an hour north of LA. So everything I've done, and I've lived pretty much in California my whole life. So when you're in California, you're kind of in a bubble. So when you travel to New York in the summer and it's 100 degrees with 100% humidity, or when you're in Miami and you come here and it's 75, 80 degrees with 30% humidity, you get spoiled. So I grew up here. But now with all of these other situations that are going on, with COVID and the lockdown, it's definitely something where I'm getting calls from friends in Florida. I'm getting calls from friends in Texas. I'm getting calls from friends in Nevada. And they're like, hey, what do you think now? And they go, it's definitely a much stronger proposition now than it's ever been because of the fact that we're having so many. I mean, even the tech companies are all leaving.
Well, taxes too. When I left New York, I left New York because my wife is originally from Florida. And, my mother-in-law was down here. We had no babysitting. We had my son. And I was just like, you know what? It just hit me one day, like someone hit me with a brick on the side of the head. Probably it was my wife who hit me with the brick, but it was like, what am I paying all this state tax to New York? Florida has no state taxes. I'm paying tons of real estate taxes. It doesn't matter where I live because I do all my business, virtually. So I was like, I'm a moron. I'm a moron. And when I moved, it was a pain in the ass. Yeah, you had to get all the, you have to really be organized and everything like that. But once I did the move, I was like, holy mackerel. I was stuck like my dad in this, like, I know my misery. I'll stay here because I'm comfortable with it. And I didn't even realize it until I moved that I was basically handing money over to the government for no reason,
Yeah, I agree. I think that now more than ever is when people are starting to reevaluate what it's worth to pay those taxes and what you're getting out of it.
And you know what? As you get older, you realize, sometimes, peace and solitude is also priceless too. So New York was kind of like becoming like a rat race, so to speak. And I just didn't want to be there anymore. It didn't serve a purpose anymore, so I left. I know but California is different. It's a much more peaceful environment. Although if I lived in the Venice area, that LA area, I would blow my brains out if I had to sit in that traffic every day.
When you have the big players, Oracle, HP, Elon, you got huge podcasters like Joe Rogan, everyone's leaving. Leaving. So that's definitely makes you want to think, makes you think twice about it.
Yeah, it's interesting though, but I'm glad you're doing a podcast, like I said, because I know you got a lot of wisdom and a lot of, insights. You work with a lot of athletes. You've seen a lot in the industry. So I think it's going to be popular. And I've noticed you've been doing really well with it. So congratulations on that. That's it. What's the name of the podcast on?
The Truth with Hany Rambod.
Okay, so if people want to subscribe to it, you can go to YouTube and click on The Truth. Let me talk about the Mr. Olympia competition, which obviously took place in December this year. Phil made his comeback, of course. You were working with Phil and Hadi Choopan for that show. Hadi looked great, by the way. Just real quickly, what was the visa issue this year? Was it harder this year to get the visa than last year?
Way harder. So every year that we've had to do this, the last 3 years, the first year we didn't have enough time, so he missed the Olympia. It just ran into basically just running out of time. The second year we got him in, was able to get him in and get the presidential waiver.
Yeah.
He was able to come 3 weeks. And that was 2019. That was his first Olympia.
Right.
And he had gone obviously into the open class. And then last year we had to jump through all the same hoops, but now you had COVID,
right?
Which was a giant issue of traveling and embassies and consulates being closed.
Sure.
Due to COVID. And then on top of that, Iran and its neighboring countries were having issues politically. So they were cutting off political ties. So getting him from just Iran to Dubai to the consulate was a problem.
Oh, is that where he flew from, Dubai?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so he went to Turkey this year. So because we didn't know if we were going to be able to get into Dubai.
Right.
So he went to Turkey. Then that was problematic because we couldn't get him into the American consulate in Turkey.
Wow.
Then he
was having to do all this himself, right? When he got there, was he having to go himself to the actual consulate?
Yes, but good thing is he's got a great team and friends and family. They act like family because they treat you like family. But he had a friend in Turkey that was trying to help him in Turkey. So he went there for about a week. That was, again, trying to do workouts, diet, this and that out of his environment. As much as people want to help you, they have no idea how to prep or do anything in regards to getting that. All of the things that you need, as you know, because you've done this for a very long time, is that environment. Is the gym didn't have the right equipment. Getting the food down because your friend thinks that you need to eat 2 or 3 times a day and it's not diet food.
Right.
All of these things are in play, and then on top of that, there was still the issue of getting him to the consulate in Turkey, and that was still problematic.
Right.
Then we were able to, through the team in Dubai and our distributor in Dubai, was able to help. So 80 Supplements, who's my distributor, my Evogen distributor in Dubai, along with the Pacifier brothers, they were able to get him a visa to Dubai, and then we were able to do that. And then the holdup there was, okay, the consulate's closed. When can it be open? And we can get it to you probably the third week of December. We'll get you a visa. Yeah, so the show's over.
Yeah,
show's over.
Oh my God, what stress he had to go through. That had to be very stressful for Hadi.
Yeah, and then because we had it done relatively sooner the year before, and he was here with me for 3 weeks,
Yeah.
that stress was able to kind of get quelled and was able to basically be suppressed because he was here to prepare. And with this one, it was getting so close that none of us really, like, in the back of our heads, as much as we want to be positive, you're thinking this ain't going to happen.
Right.
It's just not going to happen.
Is Hadi's personality like more like yours and mine, where we're like a nervous wreck, or is it more like Ronnie Coleman, where he's like, well, whatever happens, happens, you know?
No. It's like yours and mine. So like, because he's stressed. He wants to know, like, again, and then the year before, he looked great conditioning, great ability to show a great form, where now all of a sudden he goes, okay, not only am I not able to get there early, now it's 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 1 week. Now it's like we're days away. And every day everyone's like, well, he got it right because he's in Dubai. And we're like, no, everything is still no. And I mean, we were trying to book flights. His team was trying to book flights every day as a placeholder, just in case it shows up, so he can go straight to the airport. And then, you know, Hadi Pacifier, who's his manager, and Mady, those guys that are really, really close to us and him, they jumped through hoops of fire and drove to the consulate. They literally lit up. I talked about this in my podcast. They literally had to turn on the printers and do all the things to try to get these things going. And this is just a couple of days before. And then as they were trying to print the visa out to put on his passport, it didn't come through.
What? Oh my God.
No. And they said, come back tomorrow. I said, what do you mean come back tomorrow? He's going to miss the Olympia. So they stayed overnight. They tried to get all of the ability to be able to print the actual visa on the passport. Finally got that to him. Hadi Pacifier was there. I heard that he like almost fell asleep on the way back because he was up for like 24 hours waiting at the consulate.
Holy shoot.
So he had to do that. It was like a movie. And I always refer things to Argo, but it's like Argo.
Argo. That's right.
Argo on steroids.
And meanwhile, Hadi's got to be in the parking lot training with like boulders and stuff like that, because it's like you can't even hang out at the gym, you know?
Yeah, and you got to think about this, right? I mean, when you start to get that close, you kind of want to check out. You just want to go like, I want to go binge eat or whatever. And you're going to go, he was stuck in the airport in Turkey and he's sending me pictures of burgers. And this is like,
and he's like trying to be like, hey, Hadi, maybe I can have one of these, right?
I think he did, because he's like, I don't have any food.
Oh, he had no food either. Oh my God.
So he had to eat burgers on the way back. You know, this was like 2 or 3 weeks out, going back from Turkey to Dubai, and he was trying to sit there and he had to eat burgers because he had no meals. And then when you go with these international flights, they make you throw out your food.
Oh,
so
no way.
When someone's coming from Dubai to New York, there's no direct flight. So you've never had to deal with this at the level I have. Right? So when he flew, eventually he got his passport handed to him.
Right.
He went to the airport in Dubai, had a flight to New York, because you either fly into LA or New York. There used to be a flight to San Francisco too, but that got shut down since COVID. And the show now is in Orlando. So when he got to New York, they take all of your food because now you're welcome to the United States. You can't bring anything in.
You got to throw it out.
So now you're going to have to wait 8 hours, 12 hours to your next flight to go to Orlando, however long that's going to be. And so a really good friend of his stayed there, posted up in New York, and was waiting for him to show up so that he can give him food and walk him on board. Because again, he doesn't speak English. He's got a hearing disability, so he's.
Honey, what is wrong with his ears?
He has a genetic disorder. It runs in his family where he's pretty much deaf. He can hear beats like on stage when he's hearing the music, the bass, and he links that up with lip reading.
Gotcha.
But again, he's lip reading in Farsi. So when he talks to me, it's in Farsi. And then you throw a mask on because it's COVID, so you can't lip read. So I said, next year, I mean, what are they going to do? It's going to be like Taken, where someone's going to kidnap him. And now we're going to have to like turn around
so what you're saying is the fact that he looked as good as he did is almost a miracle.
It is, absolutely. And then also he came in, he was 22 pounds heavier than he was on Saturday. And so he lost 15 pounds for the first night because he was waterlogged from the 22-hour flight,
right,
from all the things, the stress, the flight, and, transfers from New York to Orlando. This is all a day before the actual, the day
right.
before we had the press conference.
Mm-hmm.
So all of those things all added up, and it was quite the ordeal.
Amen to him that he made it. Holy mackerel, because that's crazy. Now, when he goes back after becoming doing so well at the Olympia, he goes back to Iran. We see the response he gets. I mean,
yes.
Does the Iranian government reward him for being such a high placing athlete? Because we know that the Middle Eastern countries really value bodybuilding as an important sport. I wish the U.S. did that, but obviously they don't. But like, what kind of rewards will he get going back to his country?
Yeah, from what I understand, because I get information secondhand from there, that they do not get anything in particular because it's not considered an Olympic sport.
Oh, really?
So everything that is basically from, just like it is here. But when you look at it, bodybuilding in the Iranian community, whether it's in Iran or around the world, and much of the Middle East in general, right, in the Arab states, what it is it's right below soccer.
Right.
So you have like soccer, and then you have bodybuilding, because many months out of the year, it's very hot, and people go indoors, and they have full control over something that in a lot of different countries, you don't feel like you can get out there because of the heat.
Right.
And now you can escape the heat, and in the Middle East, by being able to be at the gym, and they get to see those results in a manner which is 100% controllable by the athlete or the person it's a hobby in bodybuilding. That's why they have a lot of people that are so interested in bodybuilding,
right.
And it's such a high ranking sport versus us, where it's not even in the top 10, right. But with them, it's in the top 3. And that's why the community is so very popular in that community. And he's treated in.
Right. I was going to say, does he get will he be able to do like commercials or stuff? Is he like a celebrity
Yes.
there?
He is a celebrity there. I know he just did a talk show there. There's some things that they're working on over there with his team to get him on more talk shows and
Awesome.
trying to do more things
great.
with his advertising platform there.
Right.
So they are working on that, but he just did a very popular talk show about a week ago. And so there's more and more that he's doing. I mean, he's got the 8-foot statue that they built.
I love that. That's great. That alone is worth it. That alone is better than getting like a $100,000 check for me. I would think that's going to be there forever. Well, let me ask you this question about Hadi. A lot of guys, I'll use Dennis Wolf, as a for instance, have decided at some point in their career, I got to move to the U.S. There's more opportunities for me to make a living maybe down the road. But Hani's in a very sheltered type of country over there where they're very protective of him. Would he ever consider moving, you think? Have you ever had that discussion with him, or is this something that does he really like being in where he is now?
He's very comfortable with where he is right now, because he's very, very tied to the people. And I think that I'm not saying it's not out of the realm of possibility, but that question was brought to him in the interview that he did just a week or two ago. And he said, basically his soul is with the Iranian people and the Iranian community there. So I think that he feels very comfortable there. And I think with the fact that just by his very nature, he's a very proud Iranian. So I think that it's one of those things where he likes to come here, he likes to compete, he likes to go all the way around the world, but he calls Iran home.
Yeah, and you got to respect that. And nowadays, it's not like there's Gold's Gym Venice back in the day also, where everyone just kind of went to the Mecca there to congregate because that's what the magazines were. It really doesn't matter. I mean, everyone can kind of make their own bed wherever they want at this point. Let me also ask you about, let's go talk about first of all, what did you think of his placing? Do you think it was the right choice?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say because I always go by what, I knew he was off the first night. Okay. Right. I knew that he didn't, he still needed to be tighter. And I knew that if we had just one day, he would have looked the way he did on Saturday night, on Friday. Mm-hmm. And I know that he got straight seconds on the second night, but I go by just look. I'm not really into what the judges place. I just kind of go by what the look is. And I knew the first night he was off. You know, he had just still, you know, we did it, I think, a phenomenal job, got a lot of water off. Yeah. And then by the end of prejudging, he got some of it off of him.
Yeah, he did. He did.
But, yeah, and as he posed, he was getting it off. But again, we were rushing everything because he had just gotten off the plane a couple of days before, and he had lost 22 pounds.
Yeah.
So he just needed to lose a little bit more, and that's why on the second night he nailed it. So I think if he would have looked the way he did on Saturday, on Friday, he definitely would have, you know, placed better. But I think ultimately we just look at it as, he told me, he goes, Hany, if I had an extra day or two here, and I said, I told him, if you had an extra day or two, that look would have been great. And he says, imagine if I would have had 3 weeks like I had last year. And I said, yeah, you know.
Could he have won the Olympia in your mind if he had those 3 weeks?
Are you talking about this year?
Yeah.
It's really difficult to say because you bring in, you know, 2 top performers, Ramy and Phil, and Ramy is one of those guys where, you know, if it was close to his best, if not the best he's been, because, you know, compared to, I guess, you know, 2013, but in some shots, he actually looks better now than he did in 2013.
Yeah.
But I think that, you know, let's just call it his all-time best. So I think it would have been a really interesting argument with him if that was the case, you know. It's just hard to say.
If you have to make the case, you know, obviously this is all speculating, of course. What is Hadi better at than Ramy? And then we'll talk about what he's not better at.
Right. I think Hadi's better at separation than Big Ramy. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think he's better conditioned. His muscle separation is better. Things pop more. Ramy, obviously, I think has more size and maybe completeness, but I don't know. It's what you like better, I guess. I mean, it would have been an interesting comparison for sure. Do you think that Hadi would have beat Brandon, though?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Talk to me about Phil. Mm-hmm. But let's go back back to the decision when Phil decided he was going to compete. Did you make the suggestion? Did he call you up? How did that all go down?
No, I think it was definitely him. I mean, it was something that, because with that major surgery, it was questionable whether he was going to come back at all.
Right.
And even though we knew that he looked good, but it was just his midsection was always going to be whether it could stay together. Mm-hmm. And it was something that he had made a decision, and also he has a documentary going on. I mean, it was kind of like he had this whole thing that he was working on. So it was a decision that he had made, and that was something that it was holistic.
Did you agree with it? Were you all, in other words, were you all in on it, or were you like, maybe that's not the best idea?
I'm always going, hey, look, let's see what happens with this physique, because I know how good he's been. I know how dominant.
But I'm asking your instincts. Your Hany Rambod's instincts.
I'm always a pessimist. I'm always chasing better. I'm always wanting, you know what I mean? That's how I am. Like in my head, when I say that because I'm always trying to say, how can you get to the 11 look? How can you get to the 13 look? How can you get to 16 look? So for me, I always knew that people were always going to draw their eyes to his midsection, and I knew his midsection could be better than it was, but is it going to be like it used to be before the surgeries?
Never. Yeah, it was never going to be that.
There you go. You answered that question. Yeah. So it's not going to be the same. So, but does that make him still formidable? And can he be that? He's still formidable, and can he still mix it up with any of these guys? And honestly, if I thought he had a little more time, like a back-to-back year, you got to remember, he took 27 months off, Dave.
I know.
That's the thing.
That's a long time.
But I'm always trying to go after what's better. I don't look at the glass being half full. I look at it as half empty. We would win shows, and I would always the next day start thinking, what do we got to do to be better? Because I'm a perfectionist. Right. That's just how I am. Right. Love it or not, that's just how I'm wired.
Yeah.
So for me, I was always looking at trying to make sure that he can improve and what are the things he can improve on. And that's my mentality. And it's always been the mentality. And I know that he was always going to be compared against his prior versions of himself.
I felt that he did. Yeah, I felt you're right. I felt like he didn't have all his size back. Would that be an accurate assessment?
I think so. I think that you got to remember when Jay came back in 2009, okay? And again, I worked with Jay in 2009. He ran back-to-back years. He didn't have a major surgery.
No.
No, he just lost, and him and Chris, whatever the formula was,
Yeah.
you know, it didn't work out. He lost to Dexter. He came to me. We started putting together a game plan, and he went back-to-back years. Phil took 27 months off.
Yeah, that's
and
tough.
he couldn't train for the whole 27 months because he had 6 inches of mesh put into his midsection. So I don't know anybody out there that has 6 inches of mesh that's, you know, I don't even know if there's anybody in there that competes at the top pro ranks that has 6 inches of mesh in their midsection, let alone top 5 or top 10. So when you start adding those things up with a 27-month break, that's where you really got to start looking at things going, okay, I knew he had to grow into the show. I knew that he was going to have to grow into the show because he didn't have all that time to be able to do the things he did. But again, he didn't make any excuses. He didn't even want to talk about, you know, we didn't talk about it. It's not something that he was going to put out there because he's a warrior and he wanted to be able to do, he knows what he can bring. And he brings, even the way he looked at the Olympia this year, he has certain things where these other guys don't. Some of that 3-dimensional size and shape and separation, that back double bicep, and some of those things, even if he wasn't at his biggest or his best, he still has certain things that these other guys don't. Yeah. And at the end of the day, that's what we were hoping that he was going to be able to edge out a lot of people on.
Yeah. I didn't think he had the Phil Heath wow factor that we're used to seeing. And I think people were judging him against his previous best. That was, like you said, the problem. When you... No, there is some rumors floating around. I was listening to like a Fuad podcast. People were floating around stuff that you and him weren't even working together for this show. Is that a lie?
No, yeah, that's a lie. That wasn't the case. I think a lot of people maybe thought that because normally I'm with my athletes several times throughout the year.
Yeah.
But because of COVID, there was no travel. I mean, especially with California being so locked down and some, you know, there was nobody coming or going. Right. So the only person that ended up coming out here, and he came out because he was really worried and rightfully so, was Andre. So Andre came out, my men's physique competitor, because he was getting ready to do his second pro show ever, which is the Olympia. Yeah. So he came a month early and just posted up here in Northern California the whole time. Gotcha. And was able to come into a nice top 5 finish. He looked great.
Smart move on his part. I think Ruley Winkler should have learned a thing or two from that, what Andre did. You got to get in here early. I mean, because with all these COVID, I don't know why anyone would wait till the last minute to come into the U.S. It was, I mean, Kamal was here, Ramy was here. Ruley really missed a very good opportunity as far as I know. You know,
I don't know what happened with Ruley. I heard that it was COVID. Then I heard it was some issues with visa because of.
But who waits till the last minute, Hany? Like you said, Hady Choopan didn't have a choice, but Ruley could have come in early. Could have stayed in and trained at Brandon's gym, you know, if he wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the thing where I do think that you got to really manage your time properly. Yeah. But to answer your question, I think some of that stuff got floated out there because of the fact that we didn't get to see each other. The last time I saw Phil Heath was the same time I saw Hadi Choopan, which was in India when we were in Mumbai.
Wow.
A year earlier.
Yeah.
And then COVID happened.
Right. Which is fine. I mean, you know Phil's physique, and you know you didn't need to see him in person. I mean, to work with him. Now,
but it does make a difference, Dave. It really does. When we're able to get together those workouts, because you got to remember, my style is different, very different than your style.
Yeah.
My style is very heavy training related too. Mm-hmm. So it does make a bit of difference because I like to incorporate a lot of the training along with the nutrition and everything else that we build on the program. I know that everybody has their own style and methodologies, but I do think that it really, could have made a deciding factor. Yes, but here's on the flip side of that. I also do want to say, how much did Phil have to hold back for not tearing his midsection? Because if he would have retore it, because he would have pushed himself to a level 10 or 100% versus 85 or 90% possibly, then what's going to happen is he's completely out of the show. Right?
Yeah, but Phil has been doing this a long time, Hany. Don't you think he knows? I mean, he knows how to train at this point.
Like he does, absolutely.
I mean, you're saying that your motivation being there would have pushed him a little.
Oh yeah, I'm saying motivation. Okay. I'm talking about just those things about being able to connect. Because again, I've been working with Phil since the end of 2005.
Right.
Long time. So that's it's one of those things where you connect. Does it make a bit of difference when you're used to seeing some people in person? Yeah. But at the end of the day, there was a lot of other different variables also. Yeah. And that's why even when Jay and I were talking about it, if he was able to go back to back and there was no injury, how is that going to be coming off of the Sean Roden loss and then going into an Olympia prep versus another, a major surgery and then 27-month layoff and then being able to train not, at 100%.
So as a guy, I consider you a smart guy, good insights, you're honest with your athletes. What do you tell Phil now? Does Phil want to keep going and come back? Or do you tell him, you know what, Phil, you had a great career. Go and do your business, make your money. There's no reason to put your body, on the chopping block again. What's your advice to him at this point?
At this point, honestly, it's up to him. I don't think he has anything else to prove. I think he's brought such amazing physiques to the stage in his 7 years of winning the Olympia 7 straight that I think that it's going to be 100% entirely up to him if he feels like he still has to prove, do it for himself to some degree. Just like this one, he did this for himself. Sure. And he did it for all the other things that he was working on, all the projects he's working on. But at the end of the day, does he have anything to prove? Absolutely not. No way. Phil Heath is a legend. He's tied with Arnold Schwarzenegger, for God's sake.
Yeah.
What
do you think if you were, obviously I'm sure you've floated around. I don't know if you've had the discussion with him. It just instincts really. Do you think that he wants to still compete? Does he have that urge?
I think that deep down inside as a competitor, we all have that urge because you know that you can be better if you run back to back. It's just a matter of, is it worth it to him at this point in time with all the other things that he's got going on? He's got a great management team now. He's got a bunch of different things that they're working on. So what the next evolution of Phil Heath is, he's going to have to dictate what that is. Right. And he's going to have to be able to explain where he wants to go with this because he's got a great team and, there's some things outside of bodybuilding that are definitely, are very exciting for him.
Such as what?
Well, obviously he's with Danny Garcia and $7 Productions. Right. They're going to be finishing his documentary. There's, whatever else that she's got planned for him being his agent. So that's some really cool stuff. Everything that they touch turns into gold with that team.
Would he consider doing?
Who else would you want to be with if you want to get
The Rock. And Danny Garcia obviously is the way to go. Would he do the Rock show? I don't even know if they're even having it this year or not. Athleticon?
No, I don't believe that. From what I've heard, that again, you may know more than I do.
I don't know.
Everything has gotten pushed back on the Arnold itself, and from what I've heard, Athleticon might go on the following year in terms of but so far I haven't heard anything. Right. I know Robin Chang's in charge of that and I haven't yet to hear any news about that, but I did hear that the Arnold Classic, the US Arnold Classic is supposed to happen September 11th was the last I heard.
That's what I heard.
So obviously, yeah.
Tony Doherty's show is also being pushed probably till later in the year as well, if it goes off at all, because Australia's on lockdown. They don't want to ever let anyone into the country again. They're like, we're sick of this. We're just going to keep everyone out of the country. So who knows what's going to go on with that? Let me ask you this question: when you evaluated the top 5 at the Olympia this year, and you looked at what you saw, who impressed you in the lineup that you didn't expect, and you said, oh, wow, this person really rose up the ranks. They really, their rating has gone up quite a bit. And who disappointed you in the lineup?
Honestly, it was pretty much what I thought it was going to happen. I thought that, Ramy was going to come in his best. I thought so only because the way I looked at it was that Ramy competed in the Arnold. And when he did the Arnold, I think, where did he place? Third?
Yeah.
He was third place. And his conditioning wasn't on. And I believe he worked with Chad.
Yeah.
And I think that what they were trying to do is, keep dialing him in. And I think that with him continuing to diet the whole year long and then missing the opportunity to train, to compete in Spain due to the COVID situation where I think he tested positive for COVID. He continued to diet through that because he thought he was doing that show.
Yeah.
Then he kept dieting. And so he dieted a whole year till December. Yeah. So you got to remember, December of last year is when he started getting ready, probably even November, for the Arnold in March.
Right.
Correct?
Yep.
Okay, so his contest prep, which you know and I know, most contest prep lasts about 12 to 16 weeks, right?
Yep.
His contest prep was 56 weeks long.
Yeah.
56 weeks. So that was going to either be really good or really bad. And I felt that with some of the pictures and with the glute from the sides and the quad from the sides, obviously you could see that he was just chipping away at that conditioning, and it took a 52, 56 week prep to get to that look. Now, so for that, I think, I knew deep down inside there was a possibility that he could really come in conditioned, because he's forced the whole year to come in dialed, because he's been dieting the whole year. Arnold, then Spain, then the Olympia. So again, he's been dieting since November of last year.
But you know what? I said the most brilliant move was getting him here 3 weeks early and putting him in Dennis James' house, because that, even Chad said, that was the key, because they were a little worried about the fact that, this might not go the way they wanted to, because Ramy was getting a little weak, and that's, I think, in his preps in the past, that's where he's faltered that last couple of weeks. And so they definitely locked him down, and I think that saved him,
Yeah, and there you go. I mean, they ultimately know that, hey, if he would slip up the last several weeks, get a little weak, overeat or binge eat or do whatever those things where they self-sabotage, which a lot of athletes do at that level because of just the pressure alone. And if that Dennis was there to help catch that, then that makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Who disappointed you in the lineup?
Honestly, like I said, I think it kind of went the way that I thought it was going to go. I thought that the top 5 was going to be right there. So it wasn't anything that disappointed me. I knew that William would be in the mix. I knew that, in that top 5 mix, I knew obviously Brandon being the previous year's winner. That's the thing, he was going to be in the mix, being that he was the previous winner, unless he was way off, which he wasn't. Again, I've been, vocal about the fact that I do still feel that he has his upper body, lower body dichotomy. There's something going on where there's upper body Mr. Olympia, and then lower body a guy that is probably a couple placings below Mr. Olympia, and that's because he just has such a phenomenal upper body. It's not to take anything away from Brandon. It's just he's playing catch up, and he's been doing that his whole career, is just trying to play catch up with his lower body. So I think that, but again, he wasn't off by any means. I just think that it's just still continues to need more balance.
Would you compare him to almost like a Victor Martinez in that sense? Because Victor's never had the best legs. He had good legs, but he never had the best legs.
No, I don't. I think Victor still had more balance, because Victor's thigh sweep from behind is where he still has that thigh sweep from behind, and where Brandon lacks thickness is on the back shots on the lower body, because he starts to look thin, because that outer quad sweep is lacking compared to how wide he is. So it loses that X shape. It's like a capital X on the upper body and then a smaller X on the lower body. And that's why I think Victor Martinez was more balanced, actually.
Who is the best person you ever work with in terms of top level tier guys? You work with a lot of guys. The best, the most pleasurable person. Like, this guy was just a pleasure to work with.
Well, I think somebody asked me this the other day about overall the easiest to work with.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
Was Andre. Andre Du, that placed top 5 in his second pro show and his first Olympia this year, because he knew that I had a lot of work to do with the open guys. And so when he would check in and everything, he was just such, he's kind of, I call him like Andre Marley. He's super like cool vibes, bro. Just, and it's just really easy, very low maintenance, was just like easy to work with. I think when it comes to that, and not to take anything away from anybody else, but I'll be honest with you, like the year I worked with Phil and Jay together, and Jay had torn his bicep. Yeah. Phil that year looked amazing. And I'll never forget, we were at the Trump Hotel, and he told me, look, man, just take a quick look at me. Tell me what I need to do for the next couple of meals, and go take care of Jay.
Really?
Yep. He says, because I know Jay's, you got work to do with Jay, because he had torn his bicep a couple weeks prior.
Right.
And Phil, like, that's how thoughtful he is when it comes to stuff like that.
Right.
Like Phil, yeah. And a lot of these stories because I don't have these types of deep conversations normally. So they don't really get to come out.
Yeah.
But with Phil, he just said, take care of Jay. And normally anybody else would have told me not to even work with Jay.
Right.
But he recommended it when Jay needed help after losing and said, I'm okay with it if you want to work with him. Because you got to remember, in that same Olympia where Jay lost, Phil was third in his first Olympia.
Right.
Dexter won. Jay was second.
Correct.
Phil was third in 2008. That was Phil's first Olympia. Phil made it a point to say, hey, look, you just bring us both in at our best and let the judges sort out the rest. So you could work with them in 2009, coming up. I'm okay with it. I said, you sure? Because, I've been working with you now since the end of 05. We just came off of a third place finish. He was second. Are you sure you're good with that? He goes, I'm absolutely okay with that. And the following year in 09, Phil ends up getting sick. He starts throwing up the night before,
right,
and we had all these digestive problems that he had and everything else. And he got beat by Kai.
Yep.
And a lot of people forget this. He got beat by Kai by, I believe, 1 point. And he was fifth, and Kai was, I believe, fourth.
Yep.
And Jay came in, arguably
amazing,
his all-time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, that whole prep went off without a glitch because the attention to detail with Jay when we worked together was on a whole different level. I mean, he'll tell you that I wrote him like Zorro, and he drove him crazy because my system is very different than Chris's system.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. So that was it. But going back on that to answer that question, Phil was so like in 11, and then 2010, Phil was second, Jay was first, and then the following year they flip-flopped, and again, Jay had just torn his bicep, and I'll never forget. Phil came to me and said, "You take care of Jay. You do whatever you can. Take as much time as you can. Just tell me when you need to look at me again."
Yeah, Phil knew he was looking great. He probably like, I got this shot.
Absolutely. And
it's always good when you know you're the best. It's a nice feeling inside, right?
Well, he didn't know he was the best, but he knew that he was in a really good spot,
he knew
that he was at his best, but he didn't know how everybody else looked. But he knew that Jay tore the bicep, and we had to turn around and try to do whatever we could to try to make sure that he stays full and dry him out and get that combination. And as Jay would tell you, I mean, it's going to really be tough when you set a standard like you did in 09.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Everyone's judging you against that, of course. Who was the most, not to be punny here, but who was the most gifted person you ever worked with?
Oh, man. I everyone wants to say the gift.
Yeah, I know. That's why I said that. Not to be punny here, but
But again, but people think that, oh yeah, anybody could have trained him. He would have had shredded glutes. That's not the case. He's not a Dexter.
Yeah.
I think Dexter is the most genetically gifted athlete on that stage.
Probably.
Because, no, he has to be. Let me tell you why. He would do preps while still eating cheat meals. He would do no cardio. He could, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, all of these things. Phil killed himself.
Yeah.
Cardio, diet, like make sure that cross the T's, dot the I's.
Even Ronnie used to kill himself. Yeah, you're right.
These guys really did. And then you'd have Dexter on there and be like, yeah, I started dieting 3 weeks ago. I did about 20 minutes of cardio 2 times a week. And, it's just like, when you would do those interviews with Arnold.
Yeah.
So Ronnie wasn't doing that.
No.
Jay wasn't doing that. Phil wasn't doing that. Dexter was doing that up until a couple of years ago.
Right.
And he only in his 50s now is he started to do cardio the last couple of years from what I understand. So I think the most gifted person on that stage is Dexter Jackson.
Right.
But I think the person that had the best in terms of, again, now was he gifted? He wasn't, Phil wasn't the widest guy. He wasn't, structurally the biggest guy, but he had the most 3-dimensional muscle fibers. And he had the most impressive 3D look. And I think that when we coined that term 3D, and I started really talking about it, they said, "What makes Phil different?" And I said, he has a 3D look that these other guys don't have.
Especially when he was in that 2010, 11. I mean, that 2010.
13.
I think the 2010 Arnold, he was amazing. I thought he should have won that show. He was. Incredible.
He was winning in the morning.
Yeah, he was incredible. I don't know how they gave it to Kai for that. He was incredible there. Who is the hardest person you've ever worked with? Like the most difficult? Not that they were a bad person, just that they were very, needy in terms of, coaching.
I think the hardest person was Jay.
Really? Okay. Why?
Yeah, but not because I had never worked with him before. The pressure of training someone who had been already.
I was going to say, is that a little nerve-wracking for you because you had taken on this huge, personality, so to speak.
Yeah, so you're taking somebody and you're like, it's like you're training Tom Brady.
Yeah, exactly, right.
And you're like, come on, man, this guy is already like one of the best.
Right, if I don't make him better, then I failed, basically, right?
Exactly. So the pressure of having someone who'd won the Olympia twice, who'd taken second to Ronnie a umpteen number of times, and then coming in and then trying to match a look because all I did was I kept looking at the 2001 because that was the watermark, right? When him and Chris did 01. So the 2001 Olympia was in my opinion, was
best conditioning,
best overall looks. And it's like, you got to try to bring that in off of a guy who just lost. And then you got guys like Muscle Time saying that he's not even going to be top 5 in the 2009 Olympia. They were saying that he wasn't going to be in the top 5.
Yeah.
And so Jay was very adamant about, hey, look, I know that you can't say, hey, let's win, but I know if I come in close to my best, I can win.
Right.
And so that kind of pressure was the hardest because you're bringing somebody in who's already done it before.
Right. What's tougher in your mind, coaching athletes or running a supplement company like you are? More work.
They're both tough. They're just tough in different ways. They're both tough. I think that when you're dealing with a supplement company, you have so many variables from formulations to marketing to operations to all, managing a staff. Very, very difficult. When you're doing a prep, it's difficult, but it's difficult in a different way because you're trying to get the information that you have and trying to get that person that you're working with to execute the plan. So in that way, it's difficult versus trying to have a team and work out issues that you may not have control over. It could be the pandemic, it could be, cash flow issues. It could be a lot of different things where you have multiple people that are part of your staff that have to execute when it comes to your supplement company. But when it comes to working with an athlete, it's difficult because you have to not only be able to tell people, clients, what to eat, what kind of how much cardio to do, all the different other pieces, but you also have to be a therapist because you have to make sure that you take care of their highs and lows because you have to make sure that if things become tough for them financially or emotionally in their relationships, you got to be there to help them to be able to help that because it'll definitely help smooth out the possibility of them being able to go and stress eat or of those things, especially when you're working with the younger guys.
Yeah. Final question. COVID vaccine, will you take it or won't you take it?
I would wait. My personal thing is wait. And because there's some things that I'm very looking forward to, like Johnson & Johnson. I have a degree in biology like yourself. Yeah. It's one of those things where I really feel that the science of some of the vaccines are a little bit different. And I'm very looking forward to, I'd rather look forward to the Johnson & Johnson vaccine.
Why?
Because it's a one-shot vaccine.
Gotcha.
And because now with these different strains, I think you're going to be able to start realizing as these different strains take over, which ones of the vaccines are actually going to be more beneficial for you, because they're going to notice that, hey, look, if the UK strain or the Australian strain of the virus are also better handled with the Pfizer vaccine versus the Moderna vaccine, or is this Johnson & Johnson vaccine going to help the Australian strain, the UK strain, and then now there's a South African strain. Yeah. So what they're also saying is that you might have to end up doing booster shots. So at the end of the day, I feel that I'd like to really see where this Johnson & Johnson one goes. Because again, the people that I know who have been vaccinated, the friends of mine that are doctors, they said that they've been getting issues with a couple of days of symptoms with the second shot. So therefore, if there's a one shot and you're not having to go through that twice, that definitely can make a difference. And also figuring out which one of these vaccines, because now there's 4 major vaccines on in the U.S. So the Johnson & Johnson will be coming up, the AstraZeneca one that's been okayed in the UK, and I don't know if it's been okayed here yet. Then you have the Moderna vaccine, then you have the Pfizer vaccines that are already been okayed here. So it's just seeing what the ability for your body to not have issues, make sure which one to choose from, and then also make sure that it can be okay with the multiple strains that are coming out.
Right.
So that's what I look at.
Yeah, I almost think it's going to turn into like a flu vaccine. You have to take a booster every year, because there's going to be a new strain out of it, which would not be out of the ordinary because it is very similar to that anyway. In terms of the way it's
absolutely. They're already talking about a booster right now for, I believe it was the Moderna one, and I do think that it's going to keep mutating. And I think that there's going to be a COVID-20, there's going to be a COVID-21, there's going to be COVID-22, and I would not be surprised if it's yearly or semi-annually. There's going to have to be updates. So the key, when everybody asks me, is try to get your body to a point where you can recover if you get through it.
Right.
So try to keep your body's immune system high, work on your gut health, make sure you work on your cardiovascular health, and the friends and family members who have gotten it. I do, notice that there's a big difference with the ones that have obviously less issues, that are more just athletic, tend to get over it because they just have a better system for recovery.
And some people just seem to be more susceptible. I'm sure we'll figure that out, or they'll figure out genetically why some people are more susceptible. And I bet, I've had my DNA tested. I bet if you test people's DNA, there's certain markers that, if you have, you're probably more susceptible to these viruses. So it's interesting. Well, like I said, I think your advice of watch and wait, especially if you're in the younger age category and you're not like in your 70s or where you have to worry about, death being one of the side effects. I think that's probably a smarter way to go. Hany, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. The podcast is called The Truth with Hany Rambod. You can subscribe on YouTube, and Hany interviews a lot of top guys in the sport and gives out some great information. Once again, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, and hopefully we'll get to do this a little more often.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, guys, and that's going to take us to the end of another episode of Live With. I'm Dave Palumbo for Hany Rambod. We'll see you next time.